From InTechnology, and a very warm welcome to you all for this session, which is on strategy and planning. I'll just break down the agenda for you, which I've given everybody my bits of paper. There'll be less than that, 2 minutes from me, which I'll say a few things about InTechnology and the context of InTechnology's participation, not only at this event with the Cloud Circle, but Cloud Circle events in general, which form a very important part of our dialogue with the business community, whom we are attempting to serve. Then Mark from Levett Bucknall, RLB, will present on their approach to the cloud and how they have met their business challenges through the use of cloud-based services. That'll last for about 15 minutes. And then we'll have 20 minutes of discussion at the tables. And there'll be 4 sections which will be introduced to you by each of your facilitators. At the end of each of those sessions, we'll then talk together. We'll present our findings. Each of those leaders will present their findings for 5 minutes so that we can share amongst all the tables what we've discussed at each of those tables. Okay, a couple of things about InTechnology to begin with. InTechnology is a provider of managed data and voice infrastructure services, essentially private cloud services in modern parlance. One of the things, as evidenced here by our Chief Executive, is that there are a number of organisations that can themselves offer the individual elements of the services we offer, but we're quite convinced that it's very challenging for a lot of organisations, service providers, to match our ability to offer a complete range of data and voice infrastructure services, and we welcome you to challenge us on that. We've also got 30 years experience of the evolution of IT and the provision of IT services from literally the era of the personal computer through to the web, to mobile, and now consumer IT. And our achievements include the team that created the free serve proposition, for example. So it's a company that has had a long and established record in providing services that are now termed as cloud. A little bit of detail here in terms of the breakdown, but I'll keep it very brief because we have a capability. So, for example, it might be in managed IP networks, off-site data backup, off-site data archiving, cloud-based telephony and unified communications. But all of that means absolutely nothing without the context of the discussion with you, your business, your objectives, your challenges, and as mentioned by several speakers earlier in these sessions, how IT is supporting and enabling the business and how cloud is going to support the IT to support the business and particularly the change that's occurring in your organisation. So at this stage, I'll very quickly pass on to Mark, and he'll present what they've achieved at RLB, and hopefully that will get you thinking ahead of our individual table discussions. Thank you.
One, two. Am I just coming out? Okay. Mark Evans. I'm IT manager EMEA for Levett Bucknall, and for those with a long enough memory, I'm the 3rd best Kojak impersonator in the West Midlands. So, the snappy title you can see there is easy for everyone to read. I'm not going to go through the slides and sort of stand here and look at them and say, Mark Evans, IT manager. I'll leave that to you. There's a lot of sort of free-form talking to do around it. So if we take questions at the end, just make a note of the very short and snappy titles, and I'll pick one for you. If I can work this. Here we go. Levett Bucknall. 3 names. Who are they? Quantity surveyors, building surveyors, project managers. We had a large hand in the Sydney Olympics, the Beijing Olympics, and quite a large hand in the upcoming Olympics in London. We work for clients like the Atomic Weapons Establishment. Anyone here who uses cloud or is thinking of going into cloud can imagine what sort of joy that brings when we talk in terms of security, because for some reason these people are quite averse to their information going out on the internet. We work for the prison service as well. we have CAD drawings, which again, it has crossed my mind that they probably do have a market value if I wander into one of the more dodgy pubs at the back of Birmingham. But again, we need to ensure that that information stays as safe as possible. So, any journey starts with the first step. We were in a position where we joined a global practice. The UK arm joined a global practice. And it became apparent that we couldn't share data in the UK, let alone globally. Anyone here who knows the joys of network file shares knows that as soon as you start spreading them across several offices, they become really interesting to maintain. And when you consider that the infrastructure that I was given, where each office had what they called a J drive for jobs that they're working on, but each office's J drive was different. As soon as we started to need to collaborate, someone in the Birmingham office wanted access to the London J drive. Well, we can't call it a J drive because otherwise you won't get to your own stuff, so we'll call it the Q drive. Okay. But someone in the Welwyn Garden City office wants access to that drive and that drive. Right, well, they can have a Q drive and a R drive. After a while, it just became unmanageable and we couldn't even get data to work in the UK. So, we went out. We have a long relationship with InTechnology, coming up to 10 years. This might seem like, you know, yeah, on the side of business, don't be driven by vendors. We all had our fingers sort of burnt with some of our suppliers. Sometimes vendors can be a bit too helpful and they'll go overboard. It's a bit like the scene in Fantasia, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, where you set them off doing something and then they multiply and multiply and they're actually doing more than you really want. So you have to keep an eye on your vendors. You also have to have a fairly strong idea of what your business as usual is. You know, you go to someone who works in a car dealership. What do? Sell cars. Right, where do they come from? You know, how do you process them? How do you process payments? You need to know the functions of your business. You also need to speak the same language. Now, as you can probably gather, coming from the West Midlands, that's a bit of a difficulty with anyone outside of sort of Dudley. But you need to keep a clarity, you need to keep something which I obviously fail at, you need to keep a brevity in your communication. So everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. Benny Hill, anyone? That word? Assume? Anyone remember? Never assume, because you make an ass out of you and me. Make sure that you've got everything locked down. If you come from the same, if you start from the same place, then generally you can manage it. But if you're coming from widely differing sort of starting points, it can get entertaining quite quickly. It's if you grew up in the same period of time as me, then Ronald Reagan was a figure of fun. But I do like this statement: trust. You know, you can't double check everything, but on the things that are really going to cause you a problem, just verify. And if I can get this to work, come on, thank you. Again, don't be driven by vendors. This is the flip side. When we said that we wanted to have a common data sharing, document management system environment, integrating our finance system, there are 1 or 2 vendors who will remain nameless. InTechnology weren't one of them, and I'm not actually employed by them, so I don't think that I'm here trying to sell their services. There are 1 or 2 vendors who come in and say, yes, we can do all of that. Absolutely, fantastic. Can you just sign here? Well, obviously you can tell I wasn't born yesterday, because either I was a very, very strong stalk. The flip side to the vendors who'll come in and do everything that you want, but too much of it, are the vendors who'll come in and say, yeah, we can do that for you. No problem. Don't worry, we've done it hundreds of times. They might be able to do it, but keep an eye on your project costs, because we had one well-known company, I'm not going to mention any names, come in and we sat there and we had the conversation. It was great, and they got marvellous biscuits, and obviously I didn't indulge. And it was just on the point of signing, and they said, yeah, and we've put it into a rather modest cost. It was a rather modest cost. It was probably about 6 times more than we budgeted for. And he did everything that we wanted, but to make that sort of representation to the board, it was a waste of time and paper. So just be careful. You need to make sure that what you're going to get actually addresses your needs, but also, does it give anything to the company? We moved to cloud because it gave us the opportunity to collaborate across the UK and across the world. If we got a cloud-based version of what we already had, then yes, it achieves one of the aims, but you just move the problem onto a different platform. Largely, it's a question of geography. We've got an appallingly bad collaborative environment that we've moved into the cloud, but it doesn't do anything different. It's nice to be able to come to these and say, yeah, we're in the cloud, but nobody can access the information if they're based in Warsaw. That is actually quite important. We found that really important. There's so much happening, as you'll know. I'm not going to try and teach anyone here how to suck eggs, but there's so much happening in this sort of environment where it's bang, bang, or bang, bang, bang. You need to be in a position where you can just say, whoa, 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 hold on a second, this isn't where we wanted to go. And if you carry on any further, you'll be doing it at your own cost. We didn't have this with two of the companies we were looking at, but one of them in a situation where it was a case of, we know all about this, you've never done this before, so we'll do it for you. It's like, yeah, you might do it for us, but you're not going where we want to go. So keep in control. Question everything. One, it'll help your CV if you decide to move on after you've implemented a fantastic cloud proposition. Plan, review your plans and then write everything down. I know it sounds silly, you probably project managed hundreds of projects in the past, but I have a colleague, former colleague I should say, who works for another company which will also remain nameless, and they came to launch and they got some fantastic project documentation, but didn't say anything other than what came out of the project manager's handbook, and it was a bit, why have we got to this position, why has this decision been made? RLB, on the other hand, we had tons of electronic and paperwork, so we could go back and see why decisions had been made, because later on in the project development, something which was totally apparent at an early stage in the project might have lost meaning or become blurred, but once you can go back and see it, then you can say, okay, yeah, I know where you're coming from, and that has informed our decision forward. Right, that was me yesterday, before the haircut. Technological fit. You've probably all worked in varying sort of IT shops in the past. Some are purely Wintel, some may be Unix, some may be IBM mid-range mainframe. In a cloud environment, you have to ask, is it suitable for your systems? Some of us, there's bound to be at least one person in this room who's got a system which was written by Noah, and it runs on a piece of hardware that you pray doesn't fall over because the company that manufactured the motherboard or one of the significant components sort of went west with the Industrial Revolution. Not everything can be virtualised, as you're well aware. So if you've got a major point of your infrastructure that needs to sit on a token ring network, just be aware. You're on the end of a wire. I usually say that cloud is just a matter of geography. You've got your systems running somewhere else rather than in your original server room. I was at a conference a few years ago, and possibly the most arrogant IT manager I've ever come across, myself accepted. Oh yes, we've got 2 points of failure for incoming comms. It's fantastic, Oh, you've only got one? Yeah, because it's really expensive at the time. And, we were running sort of internal systems. The external link was probably for, I don't know, the CEO to look at porn sites or something. But who's saying, oh, we've got 2 points of access, fantastic. And halfway through that conference, had a phone call, met with an ashen face. Both points had been taken down because both presentations were in exactly the same place and they'd been hit by a lorry. Cloud will work for you if you've got comms. I know it seems simple, but if you haven't got the comms environment, do you really want to be accessing your systems down a 56k modem? I don't think so. Vendors, I mentioned these again. Anyone here had the most obscure approach from a vendor about cloud? I don't know, I've got a cloud USB key. And you think, well, what the hell's that? Why is that cloud? You need to look for the pedigree of the people that you're entrusting your infrastructure with. I should have said this at the beginning, with InTechnology, we use infrastructure as a service. There are lots of companies who are getting onto the cloud thing and they're rebadging all sorts of weird and wonderful things as cloud. But you need to make sure that people you entrust your infrastructure or your services with has a history. Service compatibility. I've seen one or two people who will advertise, we offer Wintel, we'll do Wintel hosting. Well, if you don't ask the question in the first place and you're sitting there and you think, well, we'll move all our Linux stock to there, there's no compatibility. I know it's a simple thing to say, and I know it's like teaching granny to suck eggs, as I've said before, but you'll be surprised how much this goes when you're in an environment when you move into cloud. What's their continuity? I don't have enough to drink at lunchtime. What's their continuity of service? What's their service level? Because ultimately, if you're shipping all of your services and servers out to a third party, you need to match their continuity of service to what you require. Now, RLB is 9 to 5 operation. InTechnology could have a complete power down across all of their network from 5:31 p.m. till 8:59, and we'd survive. But if you're a 24/7 operation and you've got 3/9 service, you need to ask the questions. Also, if you need to move at the end of your contract, you don't want to be involved in a situation where there's a lock-in and they say, fine, you can come and get your data, but you'll need to bring a bunch of USB keys with you to download it. A good vendor will accept that there's time when you may need to move, and they'll make the end of the contract as smooth as possible. So something to look into right at the beginning of the service. I know it sounds weird, it's like a prenuptial agreement, but unless you're thinking of moving on to another employer before contract end, it's probably worthwhile not losing your hair and getting agreements on what will happen. I say lock-ins, so just be aware of those and help to move. This clicker's not working for me. Roadmap. Have an idea of where you want to go, what you want to do with cloud. Anton will probably rugby tackle me to the ground in a moment to say that you don't, just because everyone else is going to cloud, it might not work for you, and you don't have to go there. But if you tally up all the pros and cons, at least have an idea where you'd like to be in the future. Our roadmap, I've sort of outlined in a few, it doesn't have to be war and peace. Our roadmap was enable UK collaboration, and then, as and when required, global. And we have a platform to do that. So that's our roadmap, and it's very simple to explain to senior managers. Why do we want to do that? If I use our roadmap as an example, we have a lot of collaborative work starting to happen globally now between the various parts of the business. Under the current setup, that won't work. But then, I'm going to put my underpants over my trousers and put a cape on and say, I can save the day. We have an infrastructure and we have a system which works. So we have a scalable element that will address future needs. Can we get there? We can. That's no sort of comfort to you guys. You need to sort of look into your roadmap and say, okay, it works for what we need now. Where do you want to be in the future? Is this setup what we need to get there? I know there's a lot of this that seems like absolute common sense, but I've no idea where you are on your journey. So if somebody comes across as patronising, then please, that's not the intention. This is information that could have been hard earned if we hadn't had some good guidance. Costs. Are there savings? You'll be in a situation where your senior managers really wouldn't care if you equipped all of the staff with Sinclair ZX Spectrums as long as the business still operated and they saved money. Potential hidden savings. When we went into the cloud, we said that we wanted to enable collaboration, save money on tootling around the country for people to get together and talk about things. We can actually collaborate on documents now. One of the hidden savings that we've got is an efficiency saving. We think, we're still waiting for the final figure to come through, we think we've saved 1.6% on gross turnover, purely in terms of efficiency and downtime and waiting time. We run on a timesheet system because we've got consultants that go out. And we think we've saved 1.6% of gross turnover. Where we know we'll make money, or save money, is next year when we bring in more mobile working and we downsize our offices. And the conservative of the small c figure for next year is 2.5% of gross turnover. Now, as an IT manager, that's quite nice for me to say. You know, guys, you can change the way you work. You don't need this huge office because of the systems that I've put in place. Are there potential hidden costs? So, I can't really speak on this one. We've got a very good HR team and a health and safety team at RLB, and they've taken these off my hands, but apparently there's obligations. I mean, I wouldn't only deal with computers, I don't deal with real people, but there are obligations in terms of health and safety for people working from home, and HR elements like is a trip back to your nearest office, something you can put on expenses or whatever. These all have to be incorporated. However, from what I've seen, the various people in my business who've looked into that say that that is outweighed by the hidden savings. Delivery of service to internal customers. I had trouble writing this slide because I kept typing, when it came to customers, I was typing B-A-S-T-A, and spell check saved me in the end. There's two ways of looking at this potentially. One, are you just moving everything to the cloud and all your systems will operate in the same way? You've just moved your servers. Or are you taking the kamikaze option where you're upgrading systems, changing systems and moving to the cloud? Managing service to your customers is something that can help to make or break this sort of project. People don't like to be surprised and people don't like change. And if you can manage the transition to your cloud-based environment without upsetting the customers, it's got more chance of being a successful project. Potential service changes. Again, this is a really such a finely lined win-lose situation. Communication. I know it used to be education. You could say they're similar sort of things. We used our internal marketing guys to advertise everything that was happening. Well, no, sorry, an overview of what was happening. You know, we've installed a server in the data centre. It's probably not going to catch anyone's attention. But a message coming out saying, do you realise now that your email's not going out here, it's going out here, and we brought this in, and da-da-da-da-da. And largely people were looking at it and going, so it still works. But nobody could come back and say, well, you did all this and didn't tell us about it. If you make a change while you're doing this, it's A1, the absolute best way to cause problems. The only way it won't cause a problem is if something that took 3 keystrokes and a scratch on the elbow and a skip to the lavatory can now be done in 1 click. If you can show a benefit, you'll get buying a lot more quickly. I mentioned about the efficiency. We streamline so many things, and people said, oh, we can do that now. We haven't got to sort of go on a quest for some sort of magical ring or whatever. We can just do our job. And it was, yeah, that's what you can do. And the marketing kept a lid on that for us. One thing that, I don't know about your businesses, obviously, but the one thing that we noticed was that people we'd bought tin from in the past weren't so enamoured with it. All of a sudden we stopped buying servers. And they're fine. I mean, they're not going to turn around and say, all right, up yours, we're going somewhere else. They still want to sell. But because we weren't buying the bulk of equipment, you know, we became small fish in a big pool. And we didn't get this, but I've heard of occasions where because your purchasing power sort of drops, you move into a more ad hoc sort of account management thing with suppliers. we noticed that certain things we were buying started to go up in price because we weren't putting the business through. So, one thing I will say is, when you get to the cloud, what will work and all the rest of it is entirely subjective. Absolute rubbish. No one can come in and tell you what will work in your environment. You are the people with a vested interest in making sure it works. And the infinitesimally small detail that Mr. Microsoft or Mr. Google or Mr. IBM won't have. They'll take it from you. That's fantastic. Yeah, they'll get that information from you, but guess what? The clock's ticking and they're putting bills in for it. Maintaining perspective. I mean, do you want to take the opportunity to right size? So if you've got 6 servers, can they be virtualised down into 2 physical server chassis? You might not even know. Or you might think, well, we've run 15 servers, we can drop down to 3, fantastic. If you stay internal, do you build up? You know, create your own private cloud? Do you build out? We do the transition to someone else's data centre. Or in both of those environments, like Domino's Pizzas, in a presentation by their CIO, they do most of their business on a Friday and Saturday night. So they burst out to someone who'll process all the data, dropping back to business as usual. So I can see the time ticking. Dropping back to business as usual when they don't need the service. These are the decisions that need to be taken, and it will only come from how you know your business works. We don't need to burst out. All we're doing is churning paper. But if you've got a customer-facing element and you know that you've got peak times, don't buy or rent the kit to fit that time. See how you can work out about bursting out to use functionality and CPU power when you need it, rather than all the time. Do you want to go public? Do you want to go private? Or do you want to go hybrid? I'm not going to define them because you'll have heard them about 30 times today. But you'll seriously need to think about fitting the pieces together. You know, what can stay internally? What goes to the cloud? What's public? What's private? What works for us? And there are issues of legalities. I'm not going to mention Patriot Act. I have, but you'll know what I'm talking about. And this is me trying to get through this presentation really quickly. People and cultural, acknowledge stakeholders. Whatever you do, keep everybody informed. You really have to. What stage of the project are we at? Where do we need to be next? Why? That's your definition all the time. I mean, again, this is teaching people to suck eggs, and I do apologise. Who can help? This is something where if you try to be parochial and keep it on IT footing, you'll end up shooting yourself in the foot. We relied heavily on senior management, not just to give us the money, but also to say, look, we may need to change the way the business operates in this way. And then they come back and say, good idea, but no. Or they come back and say, fantastic idea, we'll give you the support and we'll let it trickle down to know that you've got our mandate. Middle management, generally where a lot of these things can come to a grinding halt. If you can't get middle management involved, you'll struggle. Because generally senior management don't want to fight your battles on your behalf. And I'm not just saying that about my company, that's the way I've seen it in every other company I've worked in. Bringing specific skill sets. If you want to get people really involved, make sure that all the ancillary services like HR, you know, quality assurance, operations, they're involved and they're really, really keen. Because if you can get them involved, then that can feed back, and occasionally it can skip middle management on the way up. Vendors. I know I've sort of given them a hard time, but you know, you can't talk to these people because they obviously have a vested interest in making sure that your cloud works. Business as usual should be business as usual for non-IT staff. As I mentioned earlier, if there's a system change, so if you move into a different version of your software, IT staff is where you get a problem, skills atrophy. I don't want to do this anymore, I can't fit any servers and I can't configure Windows and I don't know about Linux. You'll get commitment issues. Some people say, well, I don't want to work here, there's no future for me here. I got rounded by repurposing. I got an infrastructure manager who could probably speak to servers in binary. He's now Prince 2 accredited project manager. He actually moved away from servers to looking at an overview of the infrastructure. No commitment issues whatsoever. That guy's seen that this is a positive development in his career. Ultimately though, you may need to release people. Nobody likes to do it, but then that comes down, I would suggest, to a certain amount of the lateral thinking of the manager in charge as to how you can repurpose people. But then again, we all know at some point you may have to let someone go. Are you then a CIO or a supply chain manager or even marketing? Because you're not running the systems. You're looking at systems now from a level up here. You're not making sure that the network card's working in that dodgy SQL server you've got. That's all been farmed out. So where does your position lie? That's something to bear in mind. There's a lot of chat going on in various forums across the internet about where the next CIO will come from. And then speak softly and carry a big stick. Sometimes you do need to knock heads together. And now to prevent Hannah from having a heart attack, I'll finish. Oh, thank you.
Mark, thank you. We'll move swiftly on. Each of the tables will cover one of these subject areas, which, as you can tell from the presentation, Mark had structured his approach to fit in with these topics. So Mark himself will chair item number 1 here. Richard Norris, IT Director of Column Capital Ventures, he's kindly agreed to chair the Table 2 discussion. My colleague Ben Morehouse over there is going to, who's another account manager at InTechnology, he's going to cover the item 3, and I shall, with the team here, cover item 4. We'll go through this over the next 10 minutes at a table level amongst ourselves, and then I'll ask each of the facilitators, the chairs, to come up and just summarise very quickly their conclusions from each of those topic areas. Thank you.
We discussed about, sorry, a bit of context. We were tasked with discussing what was the business need. No, it wasn't. It was how should you define your business requirements, future state vision and other anticipated outcomes. A very good point was made about integrating with the overall business strategy. The whole toys for the boys thing can be great, but going to your senior managers and saying, I've got a system here which is wonderful. Now, so that's fine, but at the moment you do appreciate that we're making wooden furniture, and in 5 years' time we're going to be making mobile phones. Like, I think it was Nokia who went for furniture to phones. What may work now and may seem like the best IT strategy ever isn't going to fit in unless it fits with the business strategy. So that was a really good point that was made. Sorry, I can't believe I'm having trouble reading my handwriting. Something about a cow jumping over the moon. Yeah. The step to sort of defining business requirements, the view was, it was to take a sort of macro view. How are we doing things at the moment? We bring in metal, put it through a machine, and we churn out a car. And then work our way down to the micro level. Obviously, bearing in mind the point about, we might be making cars today, and I can speak about this because I'm from near Birmingham. But we might not be making any in future, absolutely. Obviously, a cloud solution isn't going to help if the directors of the business are going to take all the money out of the business and retire. But taking a macro view also includes building into the IT strategy, the elements that we'll carry forward in the business strategy. A point was made about what is the essence of the business. It's very easy to sort of say, yes, we are a business that does this, we take this input, do this process and that output. But I can't think of a business anywhere that isn't multifaceted beyond belief when you actually sit down and analyse it. And the point about looking at the essence of the business and then the context gives you an idea of how your cloud's going to fit into that and how the process of the cloud is actually going to be a benefit to the business. And then before someone comes over and kneecaps me, the other output was defining that you're delivering a new way of ICT. So it may not be entirely in fitting with how the business is operating at the moment, but it may be something that you need to do. It's an emerging strategy. It may be something that you need to do to head off where the business plan's going in future. So, and delivering a new way of ICT can actually feed back and give senior management more of a spin on the overall business strategy, give them more tools to use. And that's pretty much where the 2 minutes finish for us. Thank you. Cheers, guys.
We answered the question what to consider in evaluating what will and won't work on the cloud and why. It's a subjective one, I suggested in the presentation earlier, and what will work for you will be different, and what won't work for you will be different per business. We spoke a little bit about demand, burstability, predictable burstability, like you know you're going to be busy at Christmas, or unpredictable burstability, which the chap on my table, Wayne, mentioned. Works for an airport, and if generally the website gets no traffic, but if there's an ash cloud or anything or fog, they get an awful lot, and that's completely unpredictable. So making sure that's part of your agreement and part of the technical architecture of any solution you go for. I use the word agile as well, allowing your business to be agile. I like that. Be mindful of compliance, because compliance is still your responsibility regardless of whether you go to the cloud or not. There'll be elements of that which will work between the cloud provider and yourselves, but be mindful of that and the reputational impact if you become uncompliant by going to the cloud. We talked a little bit about separation of data as well, the idea that you can have some data in the cloud and some data stored locally to allow you to move to the cloud, but allow you to maintain compliance. The example was allowing data to be stored there, but specific information such as credit card or name or address details to be stored locally. So that sort of consideration. What caused a lot of debate, and what we could have talked about for much longer, was the effect of reputational issues on the provider affecting your business. And the example was Amazon having a bit of trouble with WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks deciding to close down Amazon. And if you're on the Amazon cloud, the effect that would have on your business, even though it's got nothing to do with you in any way, shape or form. So worth considering that. I made the comment that you should definitely go with InTechnology then, because no one's heard of us. So definitely worth considering that. And what followed on from that was the idea of unknown threats. So if you've got the data in your data center, okay, it'll come to its own problems, but you can understand the threats. You understand someone getting onto your network, you understand someone breaking in and stealing something. You know those threats. What threats are out there in the cloud? Currently undefined. There's probably threats that we're not aware of yet. So be mindful of that. And also the comments made, no one knows the value of your data better than you, or no one knows the value of your data apart from you, really. On a server, it's just a server to you. It could be the life and soul, and definitely is the life and soul of your business. So be mindful when you're moving to cloud-based services of the value of your own data to yourselves. We also Kevin spoke a little bit about moving monitoring into the cloud and what would be the impact on resource. I think Richard mentioned earlier in his presentation about how he's moved from having one security guy to having 12 security guys just overnight. And it's a similar sort of thing when you're looking at the cloud. You have a really strong impact on your technical resource you have available. And that's it. Is that just about a minute? Bingo.
Okay, very quickly. Most of our businesses, in terms of our differentiation and competitiveness, are based on or centred around our people and our processes. So one of the points in this particular topic is careful planning. So first item that we discussed as the team was to be mindful, for example, that most users will have low level or in some cases non-existent IT skills. So just to pause and just remember the community that you're seeking to support and serve. So that led us on to the next topic, which is to have both clarity and demonstrate communication, because that would provide transparency of what you're doing. So to be clear about what is the target operational model for both the business, for IT, to engage users, to ensure that they know whatever it is that's being deployed, what's it going to look like, what's it going to appear to them. An example of this in technology is when we're providing cloud-based telephony and unified communications. At the end of the day, a lot of the users simply will want to continue to be able to make and receive telephone calls with a traditional handset, and that's important that they understand that that's entirely possible, but there are many other things that will be possible for them. Next is to look at the IT department and actually the change that will occur there, and in particular around skills. The skills will become softer, and the skills will need to be developed, and the roles will need to be evolved. For example, that their focus is on service, not on technology. That there'll be some of them that will face us as their suppliers, so they will get much more involved in supplier management. And finally, that they'll have to continue and evolve their skills as business analysts, as ambassadors for the capability to engage the users to ensure that they are able to maximise the investment of that new project. And to reassure them particularly, if they've had bad experiences of other projects that haven't gone quite so well in the past, that may simply have been because they weren't consulted, they didn't understand the objective, and therefore they couldn't see what it was doing for them. Thank you.